all right, it's not going to be a surprise when the games get started that there will be some form of protesting during the national anthem. I think the NFL's bigger question for now is, will there be a point this season where players refuse to play games because of social justice issues? John Mara, Giants co-owner, meeting with reporters via video conference yesterday, also addressed his thoughts on where things currently stand as it relates to players protesting during the anthem. Here he is.
My preference is that everybody stand, but if you decide that in your conscience that you think taking a knee is the right thing to do, I'm going to support your right to do that, because I believe in the First Amendment and I believe in the right of people, including and especially players. I understand the fact and accept the fact that that's not going to be necessarily popular with certain segments of our fan base, but I think it's the right thing to do.
He's come a long way in 3 years. Now, look, let me say two things. First of all, I'd rather he not articulate his own preference, because for any player who's in the process of searching his heart and soul to come up with a decision, he's now aware of the thumb that the owner would put on the scale to tip it towards standing for the anthem. I think every player should be encouraged to make their own decision, and my preference is that you do what you think is right, not my preference is that you stand. I think that to truly respect the rights of the players to protest and to truly reflect what the NFL has been trying to say through Commissioner Roger Goodell, every owner should be saying these players need to make their own decisions. However, he mentioned the reaction, and here's what he said back in 2017 when this issue really was taking off. In all my years being in the league, I never received more emotional mail from people than I did about that issue of players kneeling during the national anthem. If any of your players ever do that, we are never coming to another Giants game. It wasn't one or two letters. It was a lot. It's an emotional issue for a lot of people, more so than any other issue I've run into. All the more reason for him not to state his own preference. All the more reason for him to make sure that anyone out there who would be ready to send more letters, I didn't know anybody sent letters anymore, but anyone that would be ready to send letters, ready to huff and puff and maybe blow the house in, part of the obligation of the owners is to truly have their players' backs. And I don't think it's enough, Charean, to say, hey, I've got your back. You've got to stand up to the bullies. You've got to stand up to the haters. You've got to stand up to the fans who are going to say, I'm never coming to a game again. And say, fine, we don't want your business if you don't understand that these players have the right to protest, to bring awareness to an important societal issue that has gone on long enough. That's what they need to be willing to do. When owners start doing that, that's when players will start believing that owners truly have their backs.
Mike, you've used the line many times, and it's great, of trying to thread the needle. And we know how difficult that is if you've ever tried to thread the needle. And that's what some of these owners are trying to do. And John Mara said more than Jerry Jones has said, but he still left some doubt there of, I would prefer for you to stand. And you know, things have changed so much. He was one of the guys, John Mara was, who had the NFL write a policy on the anthem, which obviously didn't go over well with the players. And after all the backlash, it was kind of thrown out. But things have really changed, not over the last 2 years or 3 years or whatever, but things have changed over the last few months. They've changed a lot. And I think owners have to realize, and a lot of them have, and coaches too. We saw it with Bill O'Brien saying, "I'll kneel with our players if they want to kneel." And so things have changed so much that's where we are. That owners and coaches have to come out and totally back their players. At this point, sponsors aren't going to pull out. They would look much worse if they pulled out at this point. So that's not even a consideration anymore. Maybe it was in 2016 when Colin Kaepernick first started kneeling. That's not an issue now. Fans saying, I'm not going to watch your games anymore. I'm going to burn your jerseys. I'm not going to games. Fans aren't going to games anyway. Who cares? They're still going to watch. Let's be honest. They might say they're not going to watch. They're still going to watch. The NFL is still going to be the number one thing on TV, regardless of what happens here. But owners are going to have to make a choice. It's going to be, are you going to continue to side with Trump, or are you going to side with your players? And frankly, that's what it is at this point. It's that decision that they're going to have to make. And Jerry Jones and John Mara are right in the middle of that.
Jerry Jones last addressed his position on the anthem issue, his effort to thread the needle by fashioning a compromise where players would stand during the anthem but find some other way to protest. It's been a long 10 days, and a lot's happened in between. Last Friday, when he appeared yet again on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, wasn't asked about it, even though I think the world changed dramatically, the sports world particularly, from Tuesday to Friday of last week. Then came Tuesday of this week, wasn't asked about it again. I don't know this, but I believe that the folks at the flagship station for the Dallas Cowboy broadcast have been told ixnay on the anthem questions. I wonder if, though, he's going to want to address it now. We've seen Dak Prescott. Yesterday, there were more comments suggesting, I think it was Tyrone Crawford, saying that players have the green light to protest. When I see these, since it's coming from the players and not from ownership, part of me is skeptical that there's been this opening of the floodgates where they've been told, do whatever you want. Sorry, forget everything that we've said and done over the last 3 years. We've had an organic personality change, and we're now going to let you protest. I think that this idea that they've got a green light to protest is all part of the effort to coax them to stand for the anthem and then find some other platform for protesting.
You go back to last year when they acquired Michael Bennett and they acquired Robert Quinn, and both in trades, and both of those guys ended up standing for the national anthem, which they had not done previously. They had both protested in the past. But how did the Cowboys get them to do that? Well, they gave them contractual things that led them to stand for the anthem. Now, Michael Bennett wandered with a cup of water in the background. He didn't stand with toes on the line, I'm sure, as Jerry Jones would have appreciated, but he certainly stood for the anthem. He didn't sit, he didn't kneel, he didn't stay in the locker room, he didn't do all those things. And the Cowboys are one of the only teams in the NFL who have never had a player protest during the anthem. Jerry Jones has always found a way to make that happen. I just think it's going to be much harder this year to find a way to make that happen, because Dontari Poe has already been one who's come out and said, I don't care what my teammates do, I am going to kneel for the national anthem. So how he fixes all this, I don't know, but I'll be more surprised that if the Cowboys don't have a player protest than I will be that Adrian Peterson got released today.
The way Tyrone Crawford explained it yesterday, he said that they want to do something that will be big. They want to do something that will be conspicuous. And it just makes me wonder, is there something else in the works? And is this part of, did Jerry come up with something where he said, hey, guys, how about doing this instead of kneeling during the anthem? And explaining to them, look, the kneeling during the anthem gets a lot of people upset. They don't understand. Let's come up with a different way to get our point across that isn't diluted by that 30% of society that's going to lose their minds whenever someone takes a knee. So I just feel like there's something percolating. There's something happening. And the fact that it's coming from the players makes me feel that they're trying to set the stage for whatever ultimately is done is something the players came up with, not something that Jerry Jones cajoled them into coming up with, the way that he'll throw his arm around a guy just as it's time to work out a contract and get him to see it Jerry Jones' way, and to understand that Jerry Jones' way and the players' way are the same way. One last point on this, though, and this is something that I've mentioned twice this week, and as we get closer and closer to next Thursday night, this is something we all need to understand. It's something the NFL and its teams need to understand. Protests during the anthem are going to take a back seat to the reaction by that segment of society that is going to be very upset, Charean, when they see on the rear bumpers of the helmets the names of victims of police violence and systemic racism. That is going to be a very controversial thing once people understand that it's coming. And, we're talking to a very small niche audience out of the greater scope of people who would turn on a football game. Over the course of a year, how many millions will watch a game? You have 120 million plus watch the Super Bowl. There are millions of fans out there that aren't paying any attention to any of the run-up to the season. They'll turn on the games when the games start. They're going to see the close-ups. They're going to see names like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, etc. And there's going to be a reaction. And it's going to be a significant reaction, and it may go all the way up to the White House when it's time for people to start tweeting their reaction to this effort. And so I think at a time when the NFL needs to be concerned about what happens during the anthem, they need to spend some time being concerned about the blowback to the names on the back of the helmets, because it's coming.
It is coming, and all those things are coming. And the end zones. We didn't even talk about the end zones. When people see the end zones, I don't think they realize what those end zones are going to say. And there are going to be people who are going to be upset, even though it says in racism in one end zone. I just think that is going to upset a small segment of the population. And they're going to say, again, I'm going to turn off the NFL. I'm never watching a game again. I didn't watch the game, and yet the vast majority of people are still going to watch the NFL. I mean, we see it every year. 2016 when Colin Kaepernick first started protesting during the anthem, I'm never watching another NFL game, and the ratings have just continued to climb. So until the ratings start to decline, I don't think the NFL is going to have a great concern about this. There will be a minority of owners, including Jerry Jones, who probably will and try to work out some compromise, which he is great at that. As you pointed out, he does it in so many ways and so many different facets of his organization, but he's done that. But the vast majority of people are still going to watch the NFL, and the ratings are going to continue to climb. And until they don't, I don't think the NFL as a whole is going to worry about this, about what other people think and tweet and say.
But here's the thing. In 2016, the ratings did drop because of a very hotly contested presidential election. The NFL believed in 2017 the ratings would rebound. They didn't in 2017. And there are some who believe that one of the issues was the anthem protest, that some of the people who claimed they were done with the NFL, at least for this year, made good on that promise. And throughout the Colin Kaepernick collusion case against the NFL, one of the themes that Mark Garrigus and his legal team was pursuing was this idea that there was an equal percentage on each side of the issue that felt very strongly about it, and that for whatever reason the NFL chose to cater to the percentage that was huffing and puffing about anthem protests. What's going on now is the owners recognize that if they align with that crowd, they're potentially going to have wildcat strikes that play out, and games are going to be missed. At a time when they're worried about the pandemic, they got to worry about players walking out. And so the owners, and whether it's business reasons or whether they just finally realize it's the right thing to do, I feel like they are starting to balance it out. And that's what's resulting in the effort to thread the needle, because it's not enough to be heavy-handed anymore. It's not good enough to say we're going to stand for the anthem no matter what other players on other teams do. You have to find a way to show your players that you truly are behind them. And I think for some of the owners, it's been a little clumsy. And like I said earlier, I want owners to come out and say, we've got our players' backs, and show it by standing up to those who are trying to bully the NFL and its players into not protesting, whether it's during the anthem, whether it's with the names on the helmets, whether it's the words at the back of the end zones, whatever it is that's going to get people upset and get them to rant and rave. The owners need to be willing to stand up and say to those people, take your business elsewhere.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.